Hi everyone, thank you for coming. So yes, as Mel said, my name's Peter and this is Tamsin. So basically tonight we'll be covering something that we could talk about for days and days and days and days. So we have squeezed in a lot into this presentation. You don't have to worry about taking notes. If there's something that you particularly sort of rings a bell for you, by all means jot it down, but Courtney will be sending you the PowerPoint. So you can relax a little bit, but only a little bit, because we will be getting you to do some exercises as we go along. I actually see some familiar faces. A few people have been to some of our other presentations, so that's great. And my one's not working. Clicker wars. Okay. So this evening we're actually going to start off with you thinking about what your ideal job looks like and why you might not have your ideal job. Because I'm assuming if you're here that you don't. Big assumption. We'll look at values, skills and interests because they are really important in this whole exercise. And also working conditions, jobs, industries, things that you might not have thought about. Then we'll bring it all together with one particular career theory, and at the end we will give you sort of like some, hide behind the pillar, we'll give you some useful websites and tips. Okay, so presumably you're here. Some of you will be here and be thinking about what to do, but there's some obstacles in your way. Some of you will have actually already moved past some of those obstacles and sort of like will be sort of achieving some milestones and will have actually a goal that you're heading for. I'm assuming some of you won't actually know what that goal looks like. Yeah, you're kind of down here, got all these things, but that is a little bit hazy. So hopefully today we'll be giving you some hints and tips about how to, if you know what your goal is, maybe some ideas about how to reach it, and if you don't know what your goal is, some ideas about how to figure out what that goal might be.
And as Mel said, you may have some major career changes, so you might have already got there once or twice or three times, but be moving back down to the start of the process again.
Okay. Right, so that's enough talking already. Going to make you start working. So what I'd like you to do is just there should be paper on the table. So paper, pens, and I want you to think about all the elements that make up a perfect job for you. Could be absolutely anything. It might be the people you work with, it might be the location, could be money, the type of job you do, skills, having a great manager, overseas travel, not overseas travel. Okay, so we'll move on to the next thing, and we will come back to that list in a little while. So assuming your current job isn't perfect, think about the obstacles. What is holding you back from achieving that perfect job? So write down some of the obstacles.
Yes, they might be small and they might be large, but they're things that stop you from moving from your current reality, as it says here, to your desired reality. And it might be a massive leap or some steps. And so these could be self-doubt, fear, stress. You might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. Could be that your current job pays well, your perfect job doesn't pay enough, so how are you going to overcome that? Commitments, mortgage, kids. You may not know what the right decision is, so it's sort of in the too hard basket. You may not be aware of what the options are, and so therefore not willing to actually make that next step. And other obstacles can be external obstacles, so the economy, lack of support, or other stuff that's going on in your life.
Something else that could play into it is life roles. So we all have multiple life roles. So you might be a homemaker, you might be a spouse, you might be a parent, you're a worker, you might have voluntary responsibilities as well, sports. So we've got all of these different roles and we're trying to juggle them all. And so there might be something going on there, and some of it just isn't in your control. You've got no choice about it.
And as you'll see from this, those life roles can change a great deal depending on what stage of life you're in. At some stages there could be children that you have to look after at home. At other stages it could be parents, elderly parents that you might have to look after at home. So,
you might be a student. There's also something up there called leisure right, because we do want time for leisure as well. So you can think of that as being a role too. So we're not going to do this tonight, but at the end of the PowerPoint there is a list of websites and this is on there, plus we've also got it down the bottom. So this is an example of Wheel of Life, and this is really helpful when you're trying to decide if there's something going on about work-life balance. So a lot of people these days say they want work-life balance, but when they stop and look at those roles that we were talking about, there might be something out of kilter there. And it's not just roles, it's also what's your priorities as well. So a priority, and for this example, is health. Health is a priority for that person, and in terms of sort of the amount of attention they're giving to that dimension, they've got close to 10, I think it's probably an 8, somewhere around there. In terms of being a sports player, they've got 10 there. Manager might be about 8. Mother, father, they've given 5. Partner, probably about a 6. Yeah, so there is kind of like a balance thing going on here. Team member, I think it might be a 4, and colleague, no, team member might be 3 and colleague might be 4. So sometimes having a look at that as well, so that if work-life balance is important to you, you could have a look at this. If you go onto that particular website, they do actually have a template that you can print out and you could do it for yourself. And it'd be quite helpful to do it twice. Once, current reality, the other one, what your ideal would be. Maybe do the ideal first and then do the current reality after that. And that might also give you a clue as to sort of where things might not be quite right.
And it could also help you to identify some of those barriers.
Mm. So in terms of what you want, it might be that you want a different job and you're quite clear about that. You might actually like the organisation that you're working in. It might just mean that you want a job in that same organisation, just a different job. It could be that you want a different way of working. So you might not want 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It might be that you want not to be an employee but to be a contractor. There's lots of different dimensions. It doesn't, okay, you might be dissatisfied, you want some sort of change, but you don't necessarily need to leave where you are if you're happy there. If you like the organisation, like the people you're working with, it might be having a conversation with someone at that organisation. Sometimes we know we want to change, but we don't have a clue what sort of job we want or can do. So sometimes instead of actually agonising over what job, what's my perfect job, think instead about the industry that you want to work in. So an example would be, I'll use accountant as an example because we tend to have an idea, or think we do, of what an accountant does. How many accountants are in the room? Okay, so I'm going to use accountant as an example. So just close your eyes, relax. Imagine you're an accountant at a professional services firm, so PwC or KPMG or Deloitte or somewhere like that. And just think about what that looks like and what it feels like as well. Okay, so now you're an accountant and you're working for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare. Same job, different company, different industry. Think about how that feels, what it looks like, what the people you're working with are like. Okay. Now, another switch. You're an accountant, but you're working for the Heart Foundation. So do you sort of, with each one of those jobs, it's exactly the same job, but probably the people you're working with, the work environment, all of those things have changed around you. What you're wearing will change as well. So it's the same job, but the industry you work in can have quite a profound effect. So you might be fine with the job, but you need to think about the industry. If you don't have a clue, think about the industry, think about the organisations you might like to work for as well. So instead of worrying about the job, come up with your top 10 organisations for whatever reason. So like, I love to travel. So on my list is Auckland Airport and Air New Zealand. I love the smell of jet fuel. Bit weird. But as soon as I get to the airport, I start getting excited. So those two organisations are on my list. What else is on my list? The zoo, because I like animals. ASB, because I like their new funky building downtown. But yeah, what's on your list?
University of Auckland used to be on my list, and now I'm here, so yeah. For organisations, it's not, for me, it's not so much about the organisation, it's the people within the organisations, and so that sort of whole culture fit is really important for me. So yeah, who I work for is less important than the culture of the organisation and whether I feel I would fit into that. Yeah.
So industry, culture fit, all of those things are really important. So if you really don't know what job, think about the industry and maybe come up with a list of, you know, your top 10 organisations. And it can be for quite random reasons. So this basically sort of shows that you might be, when you're looking for a job, sometimes you're really lucky, you go to the right job, right industry straight away. But other times you might have to switch a little bit. So you might be in the right industry, but wrong job. And then later you can switch so you can get it right, and it might take a couple of steps. Another option is going the other way, wrong industry, but right job. So it's just making that judgment call. So, as I said, some lucky people hit it right straight away. Other people might have to do a few sort of like sideways steps to get into the right position. It's been quite strategic. It's thinking about what the right job and right industry is, and then coming up essentially with a strategic plan in order to do it. But it's certainly well worth thinking about those sorts of concepts.
Yes, I know someone who was had gone through law school, thought that they wanted to be a corporate lawyer, got out into corporate law and absolutely hated it. Came to me and said to me, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. And I said, is it not that you don't want to be a lawyer anymore, or is it the type of law that you're practicing? Saw her about 6 months later. She was in a family law firm, absolutely loving it. So it's sometimes it's just getting the right niche for yourself.
And sometimes it's also the work style. So some people love the sort of the 9 to 5, 5 days a week, full-time type of job. And it goes back to that perfect job, and it goes back to those obstacles as well. You might have no choice about getting a 5-day-a-week paid job where you're an employee, but you've got job security. Maybe. Sorry, had to add that. But if you've got a mortgage, and if you've got children and other people that sort of you're responsible for, it might not be so easy to sort of like say goodbye to that and then be a contractor, be self-employed. But there are lots of different ways of working. You've got the paid employment, the self-employment, contract work is becoming more common. And then we've got portfolio career, which is a combination of the above. And that is becoming a lot more common. So when you talk to people, they might say, yes, I've got 2 jobs. So 2 days a week, I'm doing contract work. 3 days a week, I've got the security of paid employment. And for some people, it's a choice. Other people, they've got no option. They've just been forced into it. But it suits some people to do the self-employment contract portfolio. It just depends on what's really important to you. There's also the whole multiple work sites. So in my previous job here at the university, I worked here in the city, I worked up at Grafton campus, and I worked at Tamaki campus. So 3 different work sites and a laptop and a big bag. Hot desking, so wherever I was hot desking. So I didn't have a set desk. And the hot desking thing is becoming more common as well. So going back to anyone familiar with the ASB building down in Wynyard Quarter, the inside? What do you think of the inside and the way it's set up? It's very colourful. They hot desk. So basically, if you're in a particular area of the bank, and you know that sort of basically your colour is green, you can sit anywhere in the green zone. So it might be a couch, it can be a little igloo thing, it could be a table, it can be a standing desk. As long as it's green, you can sit anywhere, and you've got a cupboard with all your stuff in it. That sort of is becoming more and more popular, more and more common with the whole sort of hot desking, open plan offices. Telecommuting, remote working, and then working from home, working from a cafe, all of those things. You see people in cafes with laptops. I'm one of those people sometimes.
But when you're thinking about the work style, think about what motivates you and what keys you along. Because if you get lonely really easily, then probably working from home might not be the best option for you. So you've got to think of your personal style, and what you like is quite important in that those sorts of considerations.
So hot desking, if you're the sort of person who likes to have personal things all around you and just make it your own, then hot desking wouldn't suit you. So it is really important to get an idea of what it is that you like. Okay, anything else to add? Okay, so we're going to go back to that initial your ideal job. So if you have a look at what you wrote about your perfect job, you should be able to categorise the things that you've written down in terms of these different steps. So this is the flower. How many of you have read Richard's Bowles' What Colour is Your Parachute? Tamsin will hold up the book. If you ever write a non-fiction book, he basically brings out a new book every single year, which is absolutely cool. It's a great idea if you want to write non-fiction, because everyone feels like they have to have the most recent one. This one is 2006. It's still got a lot of value. He just tweaks it a little bit, updates it. So if you want to buy one, great. You can get it out of the library. Don't feel like you have to get the most recent copy. The others will be just... The 2006 is absolutely fine. Don't tell him that I said that.
And there's a lot of online resources as well.
Yeah, and we've got the website to the URL to his website on the slides list as well. So basically, if you have a look at what you've written down, it might be sort of something to do with your values, what's important to you. So that might be having a good manager. It might be having autonomy, time freedom, those sorts of things. Or it might be goals, the sort of life that you want. Something else you've written down might be something to do with special knowledge. So you might have some particular knowledge that you really do want to use in a job. Transferable skills, so things such as people skills, communication, written or verbal, organising. And then this one is people environments. We have already talked a little bit about that. The people you work with are really important. We tend to want to work with people who are like us. And if we don't, we sort of feel a little bit, what's that book? Venus, Mars and Venus or something?
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like that. You sort of wonder sometimes if you're the alien. Oop. The other thing is the working conditions. So we've already talked a little bit about that. So the working conditions, working style. And then level of responsibility and salary, money comes into it. You know, if you've got a mortgage and children to support, that is very different to if you're totally free. And geography. Do you want to work close to home? Do you want to work at home? Do you have to move? Do you want a government job and have to go to Wellington? So geography does come into it as well. So this is a really worthwhile exercise to do it properly in terms of sort of like how Bowles sets it out will take you a long time, like a day or two. So this isn't that long a workshop. But hopefully just looking at what you've written down, you already can see that you can classify some of these things and sort of put them into the right flower petal.
And just think that it might take you a day or two to go through this process, but if you are able to get that perfect job out of the self-knowledge that this brings, then it's a day or two that's well worth it.
One of the most important things, if I was to choose, Tamsin and I both are really sort of keen on the whole values goals thing, and that can be very illuminating. If you think about sort of what's important to you, think about your current job, for example, which is presumably you're not so happy with. Think about it in relation to your values. Does it meet my values? Always, sometimes, never, and just sort of categorize it that way. Yeah, definitely light bulb moments with that. And the skills. So if you think about skills, think about things that energize you. So unfortunately, I'm good at admin, but it bores me to tears. It really does send me to sleep. But I really like organising stuff. That really gets me excited. Very weird. And I'm always thinking of ways to sort of organise things even better. So think about sort of things that organise you, tasks, skills.
Basically, one of the reasons that we're sort of harking on a bit about these two particular areas, because if you're doing something that is against your values, and you're doing something where you don't feel that you're actually utilising all the skills that you can offer, then you're going to feel dragged down by that, and you're actually less likely to succeed in that role, the role that you're doing. Whereas if you're really loving the values of the organisation and using the skills that you really want to use, then you're just frolicking into work every morning, ready to go. It can make such a difference in the way that you encounter work every day.
I love that word, frolic. I'm going to be watching you tomorrow to see you frolicking. Okay, so I wanted you to think about your life. So focus on your future and your life plans for the future and what you want to do, and are you going to make any changes? So I'll give you a minute to think about that one. You could write some notes if you want. Okay, now think about your past. Think about life-changing experiences. It could be something to do with people, having a baby, getting married, meeting someone. It could be ideas, it could be events, earthquakes, just some sort of life-changing experience. Think of a couple. Okay, so I've got a question for you. How many of those did you actually plan, predict, or control? Those life-changing experiences. Any? Put your hand up if you planned one of them. 2 of them? Okay, 3 of them? Put your hand up if you didn't plan any of them.
And yes, there are a few hands out there.
Yeah, there are a few hands out there. Sort of, a lot of the life-changing experiences we actually can't plan for. So when I think about it, I've been made redundant twice. I didn't plan for those. My brother-in-law was made redundant, and that actually had an even bigger impact on my life. There were a lot of life events that I just, didn't plan or predict. How about you?
Ditto, yes, I've been disestablished 3 times. Yes, disestablished 3 times, but got jobs in the same organisation twice, totally different jobs. Yes, then I made myself redundant once. How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
You realise that the organisation actually can't afford you anymore, and so you go to your boss and say, "I think I should make myself redundant. What do you reckon?" And he said, "Yes, actually, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a little while, but didn't know how to bring it up. So glad you did."
Intuition.
Indeed, yes. Apart from the one where I made myself redundant, I had no control over any of the others, no.
So a lot of us have life-changing experiences. It might be meeting someone, the next thing you know, you're engaged and you're married. It might be having a baby. It might be, someone getting transferred. A lot of different things that you just can't predict. but we're busy trying to plan our lives and trying to sort of plan every single moment of our lives. And I've already said that I like to organise things, so of course I like to organise my life. But yeah. So basically there's two types of unpredictability. The first one is one of my favourite words, serendipity. So that's unexpected good things. But the other is disruption, so that's the unexpected bad things. And it happens to all of us. It doesn't mean we shouldn't plan, but we should allow for the unexpected. So when it comes to the serendipity, the unexpected good things, actually I'll go to the disruption, the unexpected bad things. What we need to do is sort of, when it comes to that, is to basically make ourselves more resilient. So try and prepare as much as we can. So it might be building relationships, including professional, so private and professional. It might be having some sort of nest egg behind us. It's building resilience. It's being prepared for the unexpected, not so good stuff.
It can almost be expecting the bad things will happen. So beyond resilience is making yourself, knowing that actually you can cope will help you to cope better when they actually they happen, yeah.
Yeah, the more bad things happen, the more you know you can cope with them. When it comes to the unexpected good things, so in a sort of career context, if we think about sort of share your interest, tell other people what you're thinking about, what you enjoy doing, what you're interested in, what you might want to do. And perhaps just sort of extend the amount of risks that you take as well. Okay. Want to do this one?
Indeed. This is my favourite career theory because planned happenstance. It's kind of what's happened with my life and career. So planned happenstance is generating and recognising and incorporating those unplanned and possibly chance events into your career development. So exploiting these things really. And you talked a bit about expanding your networks. Well, part of that can be chance events like meeting someone, and you can expand your networks through doing something like that. It's also seeing these unplanned events as being somewhat inevitable, and so therefore perceive them as an opportunity to learn and not something to go at. And also, yeah, being open-minded, actually embracing the thought that any day you might actually meet your next boss. Any day you might talk to someone and they tell you about the ideal job. Any day something might happen with someone else that actually gives you an opportunity. And that is going to help you to increase your chances of being exposed to those things. And why is this important in the whole sort of career planning process? Well, traditionally planning was really, really important, that there was a sort of a perception that things were under your control. Heck, some people started off life and finished off life having been in the same job and within the same organisation. There was a sort of a push towards certainty in knowing what you want to do and how you're going to get there. Asking questions to be able to do something, so you can get that sort of information gathering, and also knowing your skills, etc., values, etc., will guarantee a match with the perfect career. But with planned happenstance, planning is just one element of career development. That chance events play a role in your career planning, and so sort of keeping an eye out for them, being open-minded, embracing opportunities as they come, and yes, not being bound by a plan, and so have the blinkers on, asking questions just to know something, just to gather information, And knowing that your skills and values and interests are a very important element in having success. But also in creating your own opportunities in a career that's going to suit you.
So when I think about my career, I'll just go back to that one. Yep. Chance events play a role. When I think about sort of how I've got my jobs, I actually haven't applied, sort of seen a job advertisement and applied that many times. A lot of it has been through networking, someone just casually mentioning something. So one job I got was for 2 years, I think, and it was just a classmate asked me if I wanted sort of to do some part-time work. I think it was supposed to be for 2 weeks and it ended up 2 years. And I had another job like that, it was for 5 years, and it was supposed to be for 2 weeks. And I thought, yes, I can, I live out east and I can go and work out west, not a problem, 2 weeks. I can do that. And 5 years later, I was still doing that journey. But it was all the chance event stuff. Mel has already said that she's had 3 career changes and she said she was, 34? So I'm up to career number 7 or 8. I've lost track. I've got at least 1 more to go. Hopefully that will be the last. But yes, 8, and this isn't jobs, so I won't tell you how many jobs I've had. This is careers. So HR man, I've been in HR, career field, office administration, lots of jobs, proofreader. And sort of for most people starting out these days, that will be quite common. And you think sort of a generation or 2 ago, how unusual that would be. It's quite scary. Career development no longer refers to upward movement. It can be vertical, it can actually be going downwards as well. Some people make a choice to start again and work their way up again, or just start again and stay where they are, go sideways.
Or having a different phase of life, decide actually no, that was then and this is now, and now I want to do this, which is going to suit me now.
With the new technologies, you've got a globally diverse workforce. I was already talking about open plan offices and hot desking and the different ways of working. That's just going to continue. They say 70% of today's job will disappear by the year 2050. That's 70%. But if you just think way back when, last century, cell phones. So in the 80s, they were the size of a brick. Think about computers. And they were sort of like basically the size of a room. Your cell phone can do more than that computer could do. And think of all the sort of jobs that have spun off from that. So that will continue. This website, just for fun, have a look at it. You can just Google careers 2030 and it comes up with lots of different things. But it has stuff in there such as robot counsellor. Doesn't counsel the robots. Counsels the people wanting to purchase a robot to make sure you're compatible. That's my favourite. There's a rewilder. So farms, there's a vertical farmer. So they think farms are going to be sort of vertical. So basically, imagine an office building, but it's a farm. So that means all the countryside can be rewilded. So you dig up all the roads and plant more nature. So that's a rewilder. There was another one, I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially, okay, so you're in a retirement home and you're nostalgic for, I don't know, the 1980s. They basically will decorate your retirement home, your flat, so it looks like the 1980s. That's going to be a job. I think it's a nostalgist or something. Yeah. So all these careers, they haven't been invented yet. Some of them have. A lot of us will be more sort of seeking values alignment. We'll be more concerned about the type of work we do and about the organisation and the values of the organisation. We'll also be more worried about the quality of life as well. And then a lot of us will be building skills and knowledge. And that's the sort of learning is a lifelong thing. You don't just go to university, learn and then get a job and that's it. You're continually upskilling and learning and being flexible.
Yes, and if you think of those of you who identified yourselves as accountants, how much change there is in the accountancy profession and how much change that there is predicted to be in the accountancy profession in just the next 5 to 10 years. And thinking ahead, how might you want to be able to cope with that change? So this consideration of the future of work is really, really important in sort of getting yourself teed up for the future.
And that's why the planned happenstance is sort of that career theory. The traditional one certainly has its place, but something like planned happenstance fits more in this sort of the future of work idea. So following a career path is a lifelong learning process. So you have to make lots of decisions and respond to things that you didn't predict, essentially. So the self-assessment, skill building, being flexible is key to actually surviving in that sort of future world of work. With planned happenstance, you don't have to leave everything to chance. It's not saying that you do plan, but you just have an eraser handy. I love that saying. A lot of us are anxious about making a career decision though. So we can get overwhelmed, we can get paralysed by indecision. You know, what if I make the wrong choice? What's the right choice? So we worry about that. There isn't a right or wrong choice, there's just a path A or path B.
And sometimes you might hop between those two paths a bit.
Yeah. So I think this was written in last century, 1990 something. So that particular chapter starts on page 111. I talk about it quite a bit with the students because it's a different way of reframing. I actually read this book again just recently and it's hilarious. She talks about, you know, pen and paper and computers didn't exist and cell phones didn't exist and a whole lot of other things didn't exist. But the message is still really good. So just think of it this way, when you're worried about right and wrong, it's just a different path. And if you think of some of the decisions you've made in the past, so go back to what we got you to do about life-altering events, and think, okay, if you had have made a different decision, just be a different path.
And if path A and path B don't work, then you can always perhaps find path C.
I quite often talk to students who really aren't sure what they want to do. So I get them to look at jobs they might want in 10 years' time. And I get them to sort of like go through, used to be newspapers, but online, look at job ads, anything that attracts their attention whatsoever. They don't have the skills, they can't really do the job, but it just sounds interesting. There's something about it that they really like. Then I get them to have a look at the job description and then figure out, they're here, that job is there. So how are you going to get there? So what skills do you need to get to that job, which is maybe path A? So they figure out what skills they need, they figure out what other sorts of jobs they need, so they're doing that. And that's great. But what happens when they're doing that process and suddenly they say, oh, that actually looks really interesting as well. Path A might be great, but it might be that after a while they decide, no, that path is perhaps better for me. Yeah, so you can change your mind basically. So it's great to have a goal, but not to be totally blinkered and focused only in that goal and miss all these other wonderful opportunities. So when I was doing my master's thesis, I was ringing up employers and asking them about whether they had an employee assistance program. And I spoke to someone at Air New Zealand and he was really excited about it. And he was talking about, oh yeah, so, you know, if you actually want any help and if you want to sort of go and talk to people sort of in the South Island, we might be able to help you, etc., etc. He was handing me, you know, this ideal opportunity on a plate and I didn't even see it. So I'd already just told you that Air New Zealand is on my list because I love jet fuel and I love travelling. And it's sort of the way he was talking, I should have gone and spoken to him. I could have changed my study plans. There was no reason I couldn't, but I decided I was going on path A. And now I'm still kicking myself for not exploring that other path, because who knows where it might have led to. So yeah, just don't be blinkered. Okay.
Okay, so we've already sort of slightly discussed these, but 5 skills that make planned happenstance work. Curiosity, explore new learning opportunities, explore new opportunities full stop. Persistence. Do carry on trying. You might meet some setbacks, but just persevere, and often you'll overcome those barriers and get to where you want to go. Flexibility. This is really, really important. Be open to changing attitudes. Be open to changing situations. And sort of your curiosity, your persistence, and your flexibility may make you actually actively listen for these new opportunities. Optimism. One of those times that I was made redundant was actually led into my role here as a career counsellor, because when I was sitting there finding out about how I could get another job and doing what I was doing, I actually thought, what I want to do is what you're doing with me. It was someone who was helping me to actually look forward to the future. So be optimistic and actually see opportunities that may not have occurred to you. And risk taking. I mean, it was a bit of a risk to completely change careers at that time. I had a really good, high-paid job, but I saw this thing and I thought, I'm going to go for that.
The funny thing about all that is Tamsin and I were at a conference, and she was on the other side of the buffet table just talking to someone about studying for a careers qualification. And so, of course, I straight away heard what she was saying, so we got chatting, and then a job came up here at the university, contract, so then I asked Tamsin if she was interested in doing it. If I hadn't have overheard that conversation, so you just never know.
Good old happenstance.
Yes. Okay, so just going to sort of put all this together using an example. So you have a friend and they're interested in writing. So what do you think they can do to create opportunities? So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to talk about it at your table. So your friend is interested in writing. What can they do about that?
Okay, so there's some excellent ideas happening out there. If you could come back together, if each table could just shout out to the rest of the room one idea that they would share with their friend.
It depends what kind of writing, but if it's a particular kind of writing, like marketing writing, you can send a sample, because I am in marketing, or you can send a sample of my work to perhaps an organisation which I felt I would like to work for, to marketing, the marketing team, if it's really good.
So identify an organisation that they'd like to work for.
Yeah, send a sample of work, or do a set of samples, or do a blog about writing.
Yep, do samples, blog, okay. What about you?
Yeah, we kind of thought find an interest that the person's interested in and then blog about it.
Something that,
Followers.
yep, something they're interested in and blog about it. Yep, so blog at the back. Talking to people. Joining club, groups, networking. Yep. How about you guys?
We have the same sort of thing, looking at sharing interest groups, so within media and public relations group to get some contacts.
So sharing interest groups.
Yeah, so just getting involved with different people who might be already in the career or
Yep.
interested in it.
Okay.
Learn more and get contacts.
So perhaps professional organisations, yeah? Yep. So joining those and gaining contacts through that, right?
What did your table come up with?
Writing for magazines and newspapers, just getting your skills out there so that people can see them.
Yep, so practicing.
And also offer you free service to them.
Yep.
You don't have to charge for it.
Okay, so free service, so voluntary. Yep.
And we can get
And
all
also-
the people who hates writing together, and we can start our business immediately.
Okay.
So find all people who hates writing.
Yeah.
It's a good one. We like that one.
What about the bag?
We suggested through proofreading,
Proofreading?
it would open, doors in a literary environment.
Yep. And this table?
Proofreading, and also it's basically be persistent writing.
Being persistent. Okay.
I also had a creative writing course.
Mm-hmm.
Take a creative writing course.
Yep, creative writing course. Yeah, how about this table?
I'll find friends who criticize your writing a lot and then rewrite and have them criticize it more and rewrite.
So lots of practice. Yeah. So the reason we came up with this particular example was to give you an idea of sort of, if you think about the obstacles that you had written down. So some of these examples would help that person overcome the obstacles. We pretty much had the same as what you've just said. So creative writing, different websites. So if you're thinking, say, about changing jobs, want to know what to do in that particular job, there's a lot of websites out there that you can have a look at. So we've got the Careers New Zealand website, so you can just put in there a job title, gives you an idea of skills, types of organisations, what you need to get that sort of job. Networking with writers, attending industry events. So when I say writers, basically you could slot into that whatever your ideal job or role is. Informational interviewing is really powerful. So you can get a lot of information online, but it's not the same as talking to people in the actual job. So attending industry events, networking, but if there's someone in a job that you're really interested in, even if you don't know them, you could actually contact them and just ask them if they'd mind if you brought them a coffee and they could talk to you about their job. People do actually tend to like to talk about what they do. So informational interviewing, we're always telling the students, go out and do an informational interview. What else? Volunteering, you've mentioned that. These days it's so easy, you can set up a blog as well, have some sort of column. And professional associations have a lot of information. And for all of you, they'd mostly, I would say, be very helpful. And in terms of writing, there's a lot of contests they could do as well. You got anything to add to that one?
No, I think that just about covers everything. And this group added some more as well.
Yeah. So if you think of your obstacles, it might be you need to get further skills. That could be through doing the actual job, getting more practice. It could be through volunteering. You might have to do it for free. It could be that you don't actually know really what you want to do, but you might know the organisation you'd like to work for, so you could go and talk to someone there, do an informational interview. Or I think it's Richard Bowles actually. He's got an example where someone, they liked flowers and they liked carpentry and they wanted to do something to help people. So he suggested they work for a local, was either retirement village or something like that. And what he ended up doing was making window boxes for people who lived there and then teaching them how to plant and garden. So that person couldn't figure it out themselves, but I think it was a doctor that helped them figure it out. So even if you go to someone, tell them what you're thinking about, what you're interested in, what your skills are, they might be able to shine light on it for you.
And that's the great thing about informational interviewing too, is that you might shortcut a whole lot of steps because the person, what they can tell you is very rich in information. Whereas, as we say, looking on a website's all very well, but if you can actually ask the person, you know, what do you hate about your job? Well, what are the pitfalls? What do you love about your job? You can get all those sorts of things in a really quite a short period of time.
So essentially we've been talking a lot about, we've talked about plan to happenstance, we've talked about traditional career planning. Up here is that self-assessment. So you've got your work style, you've got the jobs and industries, the values. So you need to figure out sort of stuff about yourself, and that's often the thing we skip out. We just go straight here, oh, I want another job, I do my CV, I apply for jobs and that's it. But we need to start way down here. And then also the marketplace, what's happening in the marketplace, the economy, what sort of jobs are out there, what's going to happen in the future. So then we sort of come together with some summary and some conclusions. We've got here option A, B, C, D. So after having been made redundant, I realised I did need options. So I'm always thinking about what's next, unfortunately. Well, maybe. So I have as I said before, I'm on to career number 7 or 8. I've got another one in the works. I've actually got a strategic plan all laid out for that one. But I've got, if that doesn't work out, what are my other options? So I've got B and C as well. Then you do the reality testing and the researching. So that's when you go to talk to people and do the informational interviewing and maybe go onto websites. Then you make that career decision, always bearing in mind your other options, and then you do this part. But planned happenstance still does come into it. It's just about being more self-aware, thinking about interests, following them up, following your curiosity. Get involved in lots of different activities because you just don't know where they might lead. Looking for opportunities to develop new skills. So not this job, but the one before. They all wanted us, besides being a careers consultant, to do other things as well. So I had a look at sort of the list and I thought, yes, marketing, that might be a useful skill for me to have. So I put my hand up for that. So always, look for those sorts of opportunities, volunteer as well, and just, once again, that networking and informational interviewing. So I said that we had sort of a page with some links for you. So as I said, the PowerPoint will be sent out to you. So these are just some links. Wheel of Life is that one for the work-life balance that we showed you. Berkeley University, so it is for graduates, for university students, but they have a really good section on informational interviewing, on networking, on social media, and then they've got a whole section devoted to sort of that self-assessment that I was talking about. So it is a great website. Prospects is an English one, and that is really useful if you've got a, say, accounting. You can look up accounting, see the types of jobs you can get as an accountant, just as an example. Career View is the same. It's Victoria University, so if you've got a degree, you're wondering what else you could do with that major, you could go onto Career View and just have a look. It's about 5-6 pages of really good information, and it's New Zealand information. Inside Careers is very similar. New Zealand Careers, it's more aimed these days at students, but it's still very helpful. And then we've got Richard Bowles' website. Okay.
The great thing about the New Zealand Careers website is it also allows you to do some of that reality checking. You think, oh, I'd really like to do that, and you can go in there and find out what the average salary is, how many people there are in New Zealand doing that particular role, and what their chances of getting a job are. And sometimes that can help you in that career decision-making process. If you find out that there's 200 economists in New Zealand and your chances of getting a job as an economist is really low, then you might think, okay, well that can be perhaps one plan, but I might want to have a backup plan for that. So yeah, it's a really useful one, that New Zealand Careers website, yeah.
So that pretty much finishes the workshop, unless you've got some questions.
Just wanting to know, will we be getting like a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yeah, you will. Anything else? No? Hopefully that gave you some insight. And thank you very much for coming.